Hi, everyone. I'm Colleen Benelli with Robyn Benelli, and we have our wonderful guest here, Patty LaDale Lane, actually just Patty, and excited to have you here, both Robyn and Patty.
Hi, everyone.
Hello.
All right.
Good to be here.
Well, this is, as everyone knows, this is the Reiki Lifestyle Podcast, which is why you're here. And we're excited to bring Patty here today with sharing her stories and some of her stories of mysticism with Reiki and how to tap into your innate wisdom, all kinds of good things. So before we go on with that, I'll just make some quick announcements. So I think when this airs, we have the 7-day class in Hana, Hawaii, with William Rand and myself, a Corona class that there will still be room for. And so you can go to reiki.org about that. We have animal Reiki classes coming up, both 1 and 2, and master, and some of the human Reiki classes. And somebody said the other day, what is human Reiki? And it's our regular Reiki, and we only say human because we're differentiating it from our animal Reiki classes, but they're the same Reiki 1 and 2, Reiki Master and Corona Reiki Master classes that we've done. You can go to reikilifestyle.com for that and find out all of our class schedules. And also what we would like to announce is that we are also ready to open the registration for our Next Step Reiki classes and our Explore the 12 Heavens of Consciousness and Meet Your Spirit Guides Reiki classes. Those are all 1-year-long classes that we meet monthly live online, but also we have great recordings if you need to, miss some of the classes or you even need to do self-study. So you can go to Reiki Lifestyle to find out more about that. And we will also be sending out more information around it. And I think we're going to be doing a podcast. It might be released the following week after this one. So you can meet us at all of our social media is Reiki Lifestyle. I'm Colleen at Reiki Lifestyle. Robyn, you're Robyn Reiki, right?
Robyn Benelli Reiki.
Robyn Benelli Reiki for her social media. And I think that's everything for us.
Yep.
Okay, great. All right, well, let's get to it with Patty. So I'll read her bio and then Patty, we'll have you begin with your story.
Sounds good.
Yeah, so Patricia LaDale Lane, LRMT, BMsc, you'll have to tell us what that is. Patty is a spiritual teacher focused on empowering women to live life on their own terms, tap into their innate wisdom, and transform their lives while embracing the healing art of Reiki. Patty's passion is teaching women to develop their gifts and empower themselves to heal and to help others. She is an author and spiritual teacher, and she holds a bachelor's degree in metaphysics from the University of Sedona. That must have been a fun course. With certifications in metaphysical ministry, metaphysical practitioner, spiritual counseling, and IMM Counseling Psychology. Patricia is a licensed Reiki Master Teacher with the ICRT, the International Center for Reiki Training. And you can find out more about that at reiki.org. And she's been teaching Reiki for 11 years. She lectures and teaches workshops based on her personal experiences and the lessons in her book. Her book's title is The Angel's Orchestra, a little book that takes you on a big spiritual journey. And it's available on Amazon. So again, the book's title is The Angel's Orchestra, a little book that takes you on a big spiritual journey. So you can reach her. She has a couple of websites. One of the easier ones to remember is reikiattuned.com. The other is sacredspacesbypatricia.com. Her email is patricialadalelane@yahoo.com. Facebook, Patricia LaDale Lane, and then again, her book, The Angels Orchestra. So I think everything is find you with Patricia LaDale Lane also is probably the easiest. So I think where we'll go ahead and just start, Patty, is let's talk about your mystical experiences and Reiki and tell us how you started on your Reiki journey.
Well, none of this was planned. That is for sure.
Right.
And everything that I would love to share and talk about today is just a divine gift. It has been divine gifts. And so I would just love to start out with talking a little bit about where I was 15 years ago before Reiki came into my life. And I had suffered with a major stroke. I was very ill. I was trying to recover from this stroke, which paralyzed my left side completely. I learned how to walk over again, but I was left with this fatigue, with this deep, deep fatigue that I could not seem to recover from. So one of the first medications that I was given when it came time for me to go back to work was Adderall to get me up in the morning. And as we know, that is like speed. And so I was able to resume somewhat of a normal life after that stroke. But the fatigue was just debilitating. And so through a series of amazing synchronistic events, I was led to listen to a doctor who was lecturing about hormones. And I thought she was going to lecture about like bioidentical replacement hormones. When she got up there, I was asking, please show me how to heal myself. Show me what I can do. And she started talking about adrenal fatigue and the light bulb went off. And it was like, oh my gosh. And then when I explored and began researching Adderall, it said that it even damages, our adrenal glands more by taking that. And so I began a journey of learning how to heal myself, right? I did not stop taking all of the medications I was on from the doctors, but I began to incorporate some holistic things into my life to try and heal myself. And so I went on a 2-year program of healing my adrenal glands and getting better and doing holistic things to help with the Adderall. And I'm telling you, I was so weak and so sick that I would literally spend days in bed, not able to get out of bed. And so I made a promise that if I healed myself, if I got well, I would give back. I wanted so badly to live a full life, right? To have the energy to live a full life. And so one of the things that I discovered when I was holistically trying to heal myself was Reiki. And so shortly after that stroke, I was attuned to Reiki 1. And it was amazing. I loved it. I gave myself Reiki every single day. And I did other things. I became a vegetarian because I was guided to do that, to eat more vegetables, to live a healthier lifestyle. And then one of the main things that I needed to incorporate into my life was peace. How do I find peace from all the stress of this very stressful corporate job? And I was in a very stressful marriage at that time, the narcissist and the empathic marriage. And I just began to ask, God, please show me how to heal myself. Please show me how to be happy again. Please help me to find peace. And it was about 2 years after my stroke that I had a really amazing experience. And it was one of the first experiences that I would say was a mystical experience. And this led me to, even deeper healing. And I'd like to share that experience, with you. But first I want all of you to kind of think about, what is a mystical experience? What does it mean to have a mystical experience? And then to maybe go back and think of some times in your life when you've had these synchronicities or these coincidences that just really caught your attention and really made you stop and think, oh, God was speaking to me directly when I had that experience. Because that is the definition of a mystical experience. It's something that happens, something that we encounter, an experience that gives us a feeling of being direct communication from God, direct communication from Source. Those, aha moments, those light bulb moments, like I mentioned when the doctor was talking about the adrenal fatigue, and it's kind of fun for us to just revisit those times in our lives and maybe make a note of those times. Maybe even say, oh, what did I learn from that experience? What was that divine lesson that I learned from that experience? But this first story that I want to share with you was during a time when I was still recovering from this stroke and the adrenal fatigue. And I was on my way to work one morning. And I still drank the coffee to get up in the morning and to get my energy going. So I was driving, drinking my coffee, and I stopped at a red light. And I looked up at the bus. It was a city bus that was perpendicular to where I was going. And you know how buses have those lights on the top of them? On the top of this bus was one word, Raphael. And I looked in big, bold green letters, and I looked away and I thought, there's not a street named Raphael. I've lived here all of my life, never heard of that street. When I looked back, it had a street name, but I thought, it's a sign. That was a sign, but I didn't even know what Raphael meant. I honestly did not know what Raphael meant. So I got to work. I called my husband, and I asked him, do you know what Raphael means, what that word means? Because I know it means something. And he said, I think Raphael is one of the archangels. And I said, oh, okay. And I immediately stopped and I said, give me another sign. I saw that. Give me direction. Immediately, right? Because throughout this illness and this recovery, I had started asking for all of these signs. So asking is the first step to receiving these experiences. I saw that. I know it's something. Show me what it is. When I got home from work that night, my husband was out of town. I turned the television on, and this is where it gets interesting. In front of me, there was a documentary. I didn't even change the channel. It was right there. And it was a documentary about Raphael, Michael, and Gabriel. They called them the bands of mercy angels. The band of mercy angels is what they went by in this documentary. And my mouth fell open, And I looked around my house because I've always loved angels, but I didn't know anything about the archangels. I had my mother's little angel statues that she had left me. And I have these angel pictures all over my house. And it's like, of course, you're going to communicate to me through angels because I've always loved angels so much. But I looked around and I thought, maybe this is how we're warned when our time has come, right? Maybe it's the angels coming to take me, right? I've been very, very sick. I didn't know what to expect. Watched the documentary, still floored. Did not know who Archangel Raphael was that morning. And now I'm watching a documentary about him that evening. And I just said, oh, I know this is big. This is big. Show me what I'm supposed to do with this. Please give me clear guidance on what I'm supposed to do with this. And then I just let it go. And about 2 days later, I got a phone call from my first Reiki teacher. Her name is PJ. And she said, Patty, do you think you can go to Houston with me to learn how to read angel cards with Doreen Virtue's son, Charles Virtue? It's not going to be Doreen Virtue, but it's Charles Virtue. And I said, yeah, I think I have to. That's a yes. She said someone else was going. They can't go. For some reason, I thought about you. I said, yes. And, I didn't have a whole lot of money, but I slapped it on a credit card really fast, right? And I thought, this is going to be interesting because what are angel cards and how do you read them? I knew nothing about any of that, right? What are they? And so, a week or two later, I found myself in a car driving to Houston, and we kept passing these clusters of vultures on the road. There was some out in a field, and PJ kind of looked at me, and then we passed this cluster of 17 vultures, and she said, well, somebody's going to go through a transformation this weekend. And I just didn't know. I didn't know about spiritual animals and communications. So we ended up at this hotel, and Charles Virtue came out. And they taught us about intuition. They were teaching us about following your intuition, those hunches, listening to the guidance. And I just thought, oh, that's all very well, but we'll see. So this is what happened. The third day of this class, it was a 3-day workshop. Charles said, we're not going to use our cards today. They had given all of us a deck of cards and we'd been practicing with one another. The cards had the words on the bottom of them. And he said, try to read the cards by what the pictures trigger. What does this card trigger within you when you are in someone's energy? And you're giving them information because you're channeling that information. That's those triggers and those things that you see in the cards and the feelings, the images that you see are the answers for the person that you're reading for. So on the third day, he pulled the cards from us and he said, now we're just going to sit in from front of someone and read for them and get information for them, get a message for them. And I thought, oh boy. So I did this for the first two people that said, thank you very much. We were doing this 3 times. On the third time, a lady sat in front of me and I closed my eyes and I immediately saw this little girl with the long blonde curly hair running up and down these stairs in my mind's eye. And she was looking over her shoulder and saying, "Look, Mommy, I can walk. Look, Mommy, I can run." And so I relayed this message. I said, I don't know if this means anything. And she looked at me and she said, "That doesn't, but that message is for the lady who's next to me. Archangel Raphael brought her here." And, oh, I got the bumps. And she said, "Let me go get her." So she sets this lady in front of me down, a beautiful lady with she had Asian features. And so one thing that Charles taught us was give the message, even if it does not make sense, you have to give what you receive. And so, I told her name was Sherry. And I said, "Sherry, I saw a little girl with the long blonde curly hair. She was laughing, running up and down these stairs, looking over her shoulder. And she was saying this: 'Look, Mommy, I can walk. Look, Mommy, I can run.'" And Sherry started crying. And she said, "Yeah, that message is for me. And that little girl with the long blonde curly hair is Kaylee, my daughter." And she said, "Let me tell you my story." She said, "Kaylee has a genetic disorder. It's in the DNA, and she's not able to walk without crutches and assistance. It affects the muscles of the children that have this. And she has episodes like epileptic attacks." And she said, "Last week, I found myself in the hospital emergency room. Kaylee was having an episode." And she said, "As we're sitting there, a doctor walks in, a female doctor, and she says, 'Hello, I'm Dr. Raphael. I'm going to take care of you.'" And she said, and she did. We felt much better. We went home, and she said, "As I was browsing on Facebook, this class came up and it mentioned Dr. Raphael. It mentioned the word Raphael." And she said, "I felt compelled to come to this workshop. And I was told by God that there would be someone with a message for me." And she said, "I was told that this person would have a black shawl." And I reached behind me on my chair and I held my black shawl that I'd taken with me. And that was kind of the beginning of all of these amazing mystical experiences that I have written about in my book. Sherry and I are still good friends. The story is in my book. Kaylee walks just fine. Now, I don't think she runs up and down the stairs quite as well as that vision that I got, but she is still in good health. She's doing great, and she no longer needs those crutches to walk. And when I left that training, I received guidance that this was what I was supposed to do, to give people messages. And I didn't know what that meant. How do you go from not knowing anything about this intuition into being kind of wide open to it? And so this is what I said to God: "Thank you for this amazing possibility. If this is what you want me to do, then put me in position to do this. I do not have 10 years to study tarot cards. I will do this work for you if you make it easy and position me in a place to do this." Within 2 months, I was reading at the largest psychic fair in the United States, which was the Dallas Psychic Fair, one of the largest, should I say. And by the end of the year, I was reading at psychic fairs every weekend and I did that for years and years. And I also, as soon as I began to do that work, I went back and got attuned to my second degree Reiki, because Reiki opens our intuition up. It truly does. And I believe that having that experience was a result of already being attuned to Reiki 1, and to having that possibility of my intuition opening, which is a gift, and that I wanted more of that. I wanted more of that. So I immediately got attuned to Reiki 2. I was taking this from 2 different teachers, and it was teachers that were in the lineages that teach those classes, separately from one another. And so I began to have this amazing life, and I was still working the corporate job, where these experiences began to happen to me on a regular basis. And it even got to be a little comical. And by this time, I had left that marriage because I loved myself enough to take care of myself, and I needed peace in order to heal. And so I had left that marriage. I got remarried, which is a whole other story, which is in my book. I reconnected with a man that I'd fallen in love with when we were 19 and 20, and had absolutely no contact with for 33 years. And I heard one day, you need to find him. And so I thought, how do I find someone that that I've not had any contact with? And so that's a love story. So I tell people my book is like woo-woo. It's a love story. I say I always wanted to write a love story, and I did. I got to write my own, right? And so I heard you need to connect with him. This is before Facebook. And my maiden name is Patricia LaDale Lane. His name is James Patrick Lane. So that's a sign, right? My mother used to say, don't know about you marrying someone when we were going together when we were 19 and 20 with the same last name. But, divine timing, right? We have to sit here and think about divine timing. And there was something, in my life path where we would end up together again in our lives. We didn't part on bad terms. We just moved apart from one another. We were never able to get back together again. Divine timing, when you stop and you think about that and taking action on intuitive hits. If I had not taken action on those words that had come in and said, you need to find him, I would have had another path, completely different from this path. But being with someone who is like-minded, he's my greatest support. But there was a time, and so I'm going to tell you another story. There was a time when I was indecisive, because as you have to remember, I was still recovering from a stroke. I was leaving a long-term marriage, military benefits, great insurance, and kind of going into the unknown when Jimmy and I reunited. And so I had some hesitation. And so once again, I was saying, give me clear signs. Please give me clear direction. So I found myself at a fair, and a holistic fair, and I'd never had my palm read. And so I'm trying to decide, do I stay in this marriage where my children think I need to be, but I'm very unhappy. I'm very in turmoil all the time, or do I follow my heart? Give me a sign. Help me, give me a sign. And so I went in to get my palm read in this holistic fair, and I thought, well, we'll just see what my life path on my palm says, right? It's fun. Let's see what this reveals. And so the lady who was doing the palm reading said, oh, I want to read the top of your palm. And I thought, isn't that weird? I've never heard of that, but what do I know? So I stuck my hand out, and she looked at the top of my hand. And as I was looking at it, a heart popped up right here. It looked like it had been lined in fine tip red pen, bright pink red pen. And I went, ah! And she went, ah! And then she said, like she was the only one that saw it, do you see that too? And I said, yes. What is that? Who has these kinds of experiences, right? And she said, I've only read about those. I've never seen one before. We call it a stigmata. I didn't even know what that word meant. And so I said, thank you. I'm done. I have my answer, right? Follow your heart. And so I followed my heart. And, we've been married 13 years now. It was a scary thing to do. It was a scary thing to do, especially after, I had been so sick and I was still recovering. But sometimes the scary things are the things that we have to step through in order to reach the bliss. I always say the bliss is on the other side of the fear. And we need to, stretch ourselves sometimes in ways in order to have more things revealed to us, right? It's like taking those steps up that spiral ladder and you don't know where you're going, but you know that you need to take this next step. And it's just been amazing. I have had 10 years of experience after experience after experience. And, I've been asked, how do you invoke these experiences? How can I have experiences like that? And the best advice, I can give is that you open up your heart, that you don't put God in a box, because anything is possible, even these experiences that are just hard for us to comprehend sometimes. And that you believe in the possibilities and that you're open and that you ask. Sometimes we just forget to ask. We forget to ask. And then that you open your eyes up to the signs, right? Because none of these mystical experiences that I've talked about would have happened if I hadn't asked for the signs and the guidance. And then you have to have you have to step through those fears. Many times you have to be courageous, right? You have to be courageous in order to grow and just keep asking for miracles, keep asking for experiences, and then do the things for ourselves. The things for ourselves that help us to be able to do these things that sometimes we're guided to do, right? Like for me, it was changing my diet. It was beginning to practice anything and everything that would raise my vibration and raise me up out of that illness that I was experiencing. Affirmations, reading a lot of books, watching funny movies. That's one of the best things if you suffer from melancholy or any kind of thing like that. If you'll just surround yourself with the things that you love and treat yourself and love yourself. That's one of the keys, is learning how to love ourselves enough to, take care of ourselves and to follow the guidance and know that we are worthy and not putting ourselves in the box either.
Patty, how do you discern when, because I feel like too, sometimes when we're in these challenging times, we want everything to be a sign, and so you are kind of, is that a sign? Is that a sign? And sometimes it is. And then other times it's not. And so what have you seen as a discernment process with that?
Yeah, I love that question. So for me, 3 times pretty much seals the deal.
Okay.
3 signs in a row. 3
so you have
signs.
an inkling, just as like you had an inkling with the Raphael, and then you saw it on TV, and then the angel conference was, so there was 3. So
3.
And you had asked after the first or second sign, like, okay, I need more to this, and then also guide me on what to do.
Show me another sign. Yes.
That's a really helpful piece of advice that, okay, wait, was that a sign?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so now I'm going to direct the universe or direct God, and if it's meant for me, it's going to show me another piece to this that I need to know.
Yes, exactly. And it's like, show me a clear sign, right? Show me a clear sign. I'm still not certain that this is guidance, and when that third sign comes, it's like, yeah, that's the third sign. And, discretion, we always have to use, our discretion too. But I think when we ask for clear signs, and then, we leave it up to the universe to put in the divine timing for us, right? The divine timing, and to orchestrate everything. So that's one of the reasons that my book is called The Angels Orchestra. I'm not talking about music. I'm talking about orchestration, because I believe the angels, our angels orchestrate all of these things. They orchestrate all of this. Giving ourselves Reiki every day, we raise our vibration. So when we're clear, we can receive and see more of these things, more of these signs.
And you get
and also about how they feel in our bodies too.
That's what I was just going to say. Yeah, you get to know your own intuition, so that it's like you see that first sign and you're like, that's a sign. You get like better at discerning it and feeling it in your body and what is
absolutely a
sign and what's not.
Yes.
I love that. I don't know that I've ever really asked for signs. So now I'm going to. I know, like, not point blank, give me a sign.
Oh, that's so shocking.
It is, right?
Yeah.
I'm a little shocked myself, like, oh, well, cool. There's a whole other thing to explore and see how that works. Because I would say I've had plenty of signs that have shown up, but not just put it in that context.
Yeah, and I'll give you something else. So every morning when you wake up, you're still kind of in that theta state, right? You just connect with God, your angel, source, higher self, whatever that is for you. And you say, show me the magic today.
Oh.
Show me the magic today.
That's a great
and you'll be amazed at what that will, and then be on the lookout. Right? Always looking. It's so funny because Jimmy and I'll be sitting there and we'll be talking about something, and 5 minutes later we'll look up and that's something that we were talking about is on TV. Yeah. And he'll just look at me and he'll go, and I'll say, I know. They're watching us. They're, there it is. Pay attention. And it may not be something deeply spiritual, right? But it could be a place. Maybe we're talking about my favorite place, Ireland. and you know, and then something will come on about Ireland, and it's like, thank you. I always say thank you when these things happen. I always say, thank you. I'm so grateful for that. Thank you for the blessings of that. And to see the miracles and to see what kind of orchestration that it takes for some of these events and moments to happen in our life, right? Thank you.
That's always what's so mind-blowing to me is, how did that happen? You know,
How
if
did
you
they
think,
do that? Yeah. How did they, and
yeah,
they use that word, orchestrate? How did they make that work?
it's like you think about every piece that it took from the beginning of creation
For you to be in that moment.
to be in that moment in that time is
Yeah.
just sometimes so mind-blowing and
Yes.
amazing.
And what if you were, a person who doesn't see those things?
Right.
What if
Well,
your
I think that's a lot of
awareness?
people.
What if your awareness and you just say, oh, that was just a synchronicity,
Yeah.
right?
It's a lot more fun to believe that it's orchestration rather than it's just a coincidence.
And maybe just believing that the possibilities that these experiences, can happen to everyone, to every single person, and then raising the bar on allowing those to happen, right? Becoming aware, asking, paying attention, doing the things to raise our awareness and our intuition, right? So I am really, I think it's so important for women and men to develop their intuition. Yeah. And it's something that we can develop. If you had, asked me before I had that experience with reading the cards, if I was intuitive, I would have said, sometimes I get little things, right? But no, I'm not intuitive. And then I found out, or I was gifted, right? I think it was always there. I just had not tried to develop it. I didn't even know you could. Well, I didn't know.
I think I was going to say that actually it's an important thing that you mentioned, because we're going to have people that are listening to this that are like, I have had mystical experiences, or it's what led me to Reiki, or this and this and this. And then there's going to be others that are, I'm just not intuitive. That can't happen for me because I'm not intuitive. But for to know that it can happen for everybody, because I was similar to you, Patricia, that there was a big level of forgetting of my intuition for a long time. And that I didn't think that I was intuitive, and that it is a skill that you can learn to develop it. It's always there. It's how do you hear it better? It's a skill that you can develop. But to also know that mystical experiences can happen for those that are also don't consider themselves intuitive in this moment.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Like the Raphael experience that happened, before. I didn't even know what Raphael meant, right? I mean, I was just asking, please help me to heal myself. Please give me guidance. I want to serve you. I want to be able to live a full life, right? I want to leave this world with as few regrets as I possibly can. And at that time in my life, man, I had a lot of regrets and anxiety. I was afraid, I say in my book, I was afraid of everything. And if there wasn't anything to be afraid of, I would make things up.
Yeah.
I was in the height of that time frame of not knowing or believing that I had any sort of intuition, and was in a job that I was very miserable in. And I was talking to Colleen on the phone. I was on my back patio. I was talking to her on the phone and deciding on whether I'm going to quit this job or not. And it's like, okay, should I quit this job and figure out what I'm going to do next? But the first step was like, I got to get out of this job because it was really, really unhappy.
I had the same job.
Yeah, really unhappy. And, corporate, like you said, corporate, that kind of thing. And I was sitting on the back patio and I was literally on the phone with her. And I was asking this question and a hawk came and it started hovering. It's probably not 20 feet, but very, very closely to above me, probably, 20 feet off the ground and maybe 30 feet out. It was right there. And it was hovering, like it was flying. It wasn't flying like in a circle. It wasn't moving. It was literally hovering from me, like really that close to me. And I'm like, Colleen, you'll never believe what is happening right now. I have this hawk right here and it's hovering and just facing me. And she's like, well, that's your sign. And so it's like, and that was, I quit my job. And from that time frame, it changed the whole trajectory of my life, eventually leading me into, after a few other things, eventually leading me to be professional Reiki and which is like, made me so happy and so fulfilling. And, so many of us that come into Reiki professions, like it's just the best thing, super passionate about it. And yeah. I know that was definitely, it's like same thing. How did that orchestrate? How was I talking to Colleen at that exact moment? And this hawk comes and just hovered right in front of me for a good 2 minutes, and anybody that knows hawks, like they'll do that sometimes when they're in a field hunting, but it's pretty rare to see them doing that. And especially for that length of time. And then to be that close to a person, it was just a wild, wild experience. And I know not everybody has that clear of a sign, but to know that it can happen for anybody, because again, I was in a place where I was actually even a little bit resistant to me having any sort of intuition because of all of the unlearning that I ended up needing to do around that.
I love that for you so very much. Yeah. And it's just been so life-changing for me. And I just, I know that I asked, I know that, divine timing came into play. It was time for me to either do or not do what I had what was in my life plan, because I believe in pre-birth planning of the soul when we come into this life, and we always have choices. We always have choices, but to receive that kind of guidance when you're on the phone with Colleen and that you've got to leave this job, but it's like, well, maybe tomorrow, and job security, it's the culturally.
And that was a part of it.
I agree.
Yeah.
So I was doing all of my work in the world and beginning to, do spiritual teaching and teaching the things that I understood. And I began to teach Reiki. I had gone back and taken 1 and 2 master and Karuna from a teacher who taught through the ICRT. And I, at the end of that series of classes, I knew that I wanted Reiki to be more in my life than just giving the Reiki to myself and give, I wanted to share this magic, to share the gift of Reiki with the world. And so I remember I'd been teaching for a few years, and then Holy Fire was introduced. I wanted to learn Holy Fire, and there was nobody in the area that I'm in, which is Dallas Fort Worth. So I decided I'm going to go to Sedona and take a class at Peace Place. And I did not know who Laurel was. And so this is an interesting thing that I also thought was rather synchronistic. And I love telling this story. So my husband and I had been to Sedona many times. We have a little timeshare there that we're able to go once a year. But on this particular trip, we stayed out in Camp Verde and we drove into Peace Place for the Karuna class. And I remember driving into Sedona, and I told my husband, I said, Jimmy, it feels different. Sedona looks different. Do you see how different it looks? Do you feel how different Sedona? It doesn't feel, it always feels good, but it feels different, lighter. And he said, I don't really feel it, but if you say you do, then he's learned, yeah, I'm listening to what you're saying. So we get into this classroom. I believe it was the first Holy Fire class that Michael and Laurel taught together. They still had notes that they were using. There were 22 of us in that class. And what's the buzz? 22 women were all talking about how different Sedona felt this time. And I thought that was amazing. So Laurel walks into the room and they start, everyone starts asking her, Sedona has changed. It's changed. And she sits there for a moment and she said, ladies, Sedona hasn't changed. You've changed. The moment you decided to take this class, Holy Fire began seeding itself inside of you to get you into this class, to get you here. Sedona hasn't changed. Your energy has changed. You have changed. So, we've been talking about how can we raise our awareness, raise our vibratory level. I'm here to tell you I'm not the same person that I was 15 years ago. I have changed. When you think of an energy, and I believe all Reiki energies are energies of love, but each one is a frequency, each that's a bit different than each symbol pushes buttons that we channel frequencies. But when you think of the intelligence of Reiki, and that the moment you commit to a class, that energy begins to work with your energy, to help you get into that class. How can you not be fascinated with Reiki? How can your interest not be, oh, I need to find out more about that? I'm telling you that I give Reiki so much credit for these things that have happened in my life, for these mystical experiences that have happened in my life. And at the end of that class, Laurel said, this is a class of 22. That's a magic number in Reiki classes, which I didn't know. And she said, y'all are going to be the ones to take Holy Fire out into the world. You're going to be the ones to take Holy Fire out into the world, these classes. And I did. I said, I am going, that's what I want to do the rest of this is what lights me up. This is what makes me happy, is teaching, right? This is what gives me the energy to where I feel like I'm well again, is Reiki. It's helped me so much on my journey. It's my best friend. And so would you like me to talk a little bit about entering the licensed teacher program and what went through my mind?
Yeah.
Have any questions about that?
Well, I do. Before you go on to that, I think there was something I wanted to bring up about intuition.
Okay.
And Robyn was talking about it with her and being in that place of not knowing she was intuitive. And as you guys were talking about that, it brought up an awareness of our trip to Egypt and one of the people talking about being very left-brained. And I was compelled to talk to this person about that and the recognition that that in itself is a style of intuition. And I think that a lot of times people think that those mystical experiences have one kind of a look to it, but that could be an idea of an innovation, or it could be like for, let's say, somebody who's in analysis, like, the analysis clicks in with an idea or a result, or someone who's an engineer and is having a different kind of a mystical experience. And so I just wanted to bring that up because being a very right-brained person, and, as you guys were talking, I had lots of experiences like, oh yeah, I hadn't thought about putting it in the words of, oh, that was a sign, but all the different things that have shown up. But then also, as Robyn was talking about it, because as a child, she was very intuitive. But then over the course of her life, being more naturally a left brain person too. She's more naturally analytical, logical. And so, like, I guess that culturally created self through teenage years, college years, and things, then, she moved more into that logical brain. And I think there's always that part of it that's like understanding that that's an equal intuitive style and an equal mystical experience. And I loved your experience of I wanted to say this too, because when I was first looking, I was seeking, trying to find something that, brought me to what I didn't know then was this pathway. And one of the first books way back when, probably in the 80s, was Ask Your Angels. So I got that book and it said, ask who your angel is. And it said, Michael. So I see this picture of Michael in my head, Michael. I'm like, how do I know that's real? That was my first question. Like, I don't know. How do I know that's real? And then I saw the big words in lights, believe. And so that took me on a whole journey of, what does that mean? And again, that was before Reiki, before a lot of these experiences. It was really one of my very first ones. And then the book taught us to find a space to go and meet the angel. And so now I know it's so much exactly like what we do now with journeys and, Reiki journeys and meditations. And anyway, so Robyn just recently was at a garage sale, and this woman was selling all of her Christmas stuff. And every year she bought all new Christmas stuff. So this stuff is still in a box, perfect condition, everything. There's the sign in lights. It says believe. And she got it for me. And so,
I didn't know that story.
no, I probably have never told you. It was way back when. And so anyway, what's really funny is it's almost Halloween. I think this might air after Halloween, but I'm decorating for Halloween in the house. So I put that sign up, even though it's Christmas, and I put it up, and then I put spider webs all over it and spiders on it. Made it all crooked and spooky. And so since that time, I've really gotten to know Michael, and I love that term of, I think you called it the band of mercy angels.
Mm-hmm.
And because Raphael, I really have always worked more with Michael and Gabriel than Raphael, but Raphael pops in too, but mostly Michael and Gabriel. And so that particular sign of believe, and of course it is everywhere. People have signs of believe, posted all the time, but it always takes me to that awareness of the very first time Michael made itself known to me from a very specific, I'm your angel, or one of them. Of course, now we see so many of them. And anyway, I just wanted to say those things because I love the idea of it all being orchestrated, and I do experience that all the time. And one of the things I ask for that is along the same lines is to notice beauty. Like, show me the signs of beauty.
Oh.
And always like help me notice it, have it highlighted. But anyway, so now after this conversation, I'm going to specifically ask for signs. And in that conversation, like I would think I would use a lot of the distance symbol. Do you have like specific Reiki symbols that you're doing, or are you just asking and activating? You're activated and asking.
But I can only think that incorporating the symbols in that, in that process, especially the long distance symbol and maybe some of the karuna, any symbols would magnify that ask, right? The energy of that ask. I love that. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, Patty, what would you? This actually segues well to the question of what would you pieces of it, like what advice would you give people who might be feeling a bit fearful around it? Maybe they're attuned to Reiki, maybe they're not. What are some wisdom?
Not be afraid. A little fearful of Reiki itself?
No, stepping through their fears with the signs that they might have given, those kinds of things that it's like, I have my answers, but I'm afraid,
So I've got some advice for that, or some food for thought, right? And it's going to sound a little morbid when I say this, but I want you to just project, those who are listening, just kind of you project yourself out to the end of your life, right? What are those regrets going to be that you didn't do at the end of your life, right? Are some of these things that you're really fearful of doing, are those going to end up being some of the biggest possible regrets? And of course, I try not to live my life with regrets. I look at everything as a life lesson. What did I learn from that situation? What were the valuable lessons that I learned from these experiences, like being, so sick but just spend some quiet time and just say, just ask yourself, what am I going to regret? There's a great book out there that I read. Can I give the name of a book that I've read on here? It's the top 5 regrets of the dying. And it's written by an Australian lady by the name of Bronte Ware. She was a end of life caregiver, and she talked to her patients. She lived in their homes, and she heard the same regrets over and over and over again. And this is a great book to read. And so she wrote this book about these regrets, about the most common ones. And Robyn, one of them was, I wish I hadn't spent all those years in an unfulfilling job, right? That's there. I wish I'd spent more time with my family, right? If you're getting clear signs and clear guidance on something, don't let the fear of possibly moving on that guidance or paying heed to that guidance, don't let that become one of your regrets, right? Am I going to regret not paying attention to this? Am I going to regret not taking the steps to do this? Is this something that I'm perhaps going to regret, not stepping through these fears, right? And when you look at all of these things in your life, I hope that you can, even now, that everyone here can sit and they can say, oh, I had to step through fears to get to this. I had to step through fears to get to that. Maybe it was a career. I had insecurities about this career and all of the work that it would take. I was a little afraid to pursue being a lawyer or pursue whatever that career is. When we look back, we say, man, I've been stepping through fears all of my life, right? My life, everything I really love and enjoy, I've had to work through some fears around that. I've had to, put my courageous suit on and do that. Just about everything involves stepping through fears. So,
were there ever any doubts about the like the divine, the mystical experiences or the communication that you had to work through?
When these things started happening to me, I thought, wow, if I was someone viewing myself from the outside, I would think those are some pretty crazy experiences that she's having, right? But I followed my heart. I learned to follow my heart, and I learned a trust was built. A trust was being built. And now when something like, when I get this guidance, I just step through the fears. So I had fears about entering the licensed master teacher program. Ask Colleen. When I, had originally made the decision to go back and take the training that I needed, and then there was a year's wait before I could actually enter the program, Colleen called me and she said, Patty, it's been a year. And I'm thinking, how does she keep up with all of this, right? And she said, are you ready to enter the program? And I hesitated and I said, I'm not sure. I need some more time to think about it. Why did I hesitate? I hesitated because of my age, because I had fears around my age. Was I the oldest to ever enter the licensed teacher program at this age? Did I have the energy that it was going to take to get through the program? Was this what I really wanted to do? I could have continued teaching Reiki just like I was, but, Laurel had planted that seed to become a licensed Reiki master teacher, and things were falling into place in my life where it looked like I could do that. It was a dream, right? But it was a dream that still had fears around it. Am I a good enough teacher to go to this program, right? Is this a wise decision? And, so I went into meditation, and I was still working the corporate job, and, fears, could I still work this corporate job and spend the time, that I really wanted to on this program? And I was given a vision. And, the vision was, so why do I teach Reiki? Why do I want to be a licensed master teacher? Because I want to spread as much Reiki into the world as I possibly can. Because I think Reiki is the most beautiful thing. and that we need as much Reiki in the world as we can have, and that it changes people's lives, and that it's one of the greatest assets that we can give ourselves physically, emotionally, spiritually. And so I went into, meditation, and I asked for guidance. Can I, show me what I need to do here. I'm hesitating. And, I got the message, you can leave the corporate job. You know how scary that is, Robyn. Leave the corporate job. You're going to be taken care of. And I saw a spider web, and I was in the center of the spider web. And the spider web was just getting bigger and bigger. And there were little spots of light on this spider web. They just began to appear. The bigger the web got, more spots of light appeared. And I was told, this is your lineage. This is your Reiki lineage. As you teach, they teach, some of your students will begin to teach, and then their students will teach. And it just got bigger and bigger. And it was like, I get it. I understand that to spread more Reiki into the world, you teach more classes. And in order to do that, what better way than to be part of the team and group of whom I consider to be the best Reiki teachers in the world, and to learn from them. And so I remember calling Colleen back and saying, yes, I'm ready to enter. And, that one of the keys is just baby steps, one step at a time, right? So many times we can be overwhelmed by the big picture, and just take that first Reiki class, right? Don't be overwhelmed. Just teach, that first, if you're considering teaching Reiki, just, invite Reiki in from a place of love, open your heart, and become a teacher for the right reasons. And that is to spread more Reiki into the world. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Well, it's one of the things we talk about is to just start, because Reiki orchestrates the students that come to you. And often people will think as a teacher, they'll think, well, why would somebody go to me as a teacher instead of you? And because the right student finds the right teacher, and Reiki orchestrates it. So when people find themselves with their students, it's meant to be. That student is meant to be with you. And I always say, just bring your heart with you. That's what people really want when you're teaching. They're not there to, you have to be the best teacher in the world. They're there because they want to learn Reiki. They want your authentic self to show up, your beautiful heart to show up, and that authentic desire to share Reiki with people. And so, of course, we know it's nice through the ICRT and the manuals with all the teaching support that exists through the outlines and the manuals, and everything, supports you in being able to do a good job with your class as you work with the curriculum. But always remembering that the students will find you. And so you just start. And I was telling somebody, again, in my trip to Egypt, I was telling someone that was there, and she said, well, I've always been the student, and I'm never the teacher. And I said, well, in order to be the teacher, you have to start teaching. It's the only way to go through it. And, it's like you say, you have to step through your fears. And the way we say that almost feels like, oh, just do that. Oh, just step through your fears, no problem. But I'm sure you can You can relate to the idea of when you think of those first phone calls and then the time in between and perhaps the obstacles that you overcome and the fears that you discern, like how valid is this fear? Because sometimes fear is meant to tell you, well, maybe don't go that way. You got some bills to pay. You need your corporate job until you can get this off the ground, that kind of thing too, where the fears are giving you pretty valid information. We say, well, listen to your heart, and your head's going, wait a minute, I have something to say about that. And your root chakra says, hold on, got some practicalities here that you got to listen to too. So,
I did both for so many years. I worked the corporate job,
yeah.
and I taught on the weekends. And so, sometimes you have to you just have to balance that until you'll know when it's time to let go, right? And the stories and the circumstances of everyone is different, but take that first step, and the other steps will show up. They'll show up, clear guidance. Give me a sign. When the corporate job just got to be too stressful and brought no joy, I just decided, Reiki is, and I planned for letting that job go, right? I planned for letting that job go. And when the time was right, I retired 2 years earlier than I'd planned, and I did it one morning. It was like, I don't want to do this anymore. And so my husband, I went in there and I said, I just retired from my job. I gave him a month's notice. And he said, oh, I thought you were going to work a couple more years. And I said, I can't do it. And he said, well, good for you. So, trust your feelings. Right.
I had that same thing with, I was making my living as a fiber artist first, and I loved my business, and it was successful. I was doing really well. And then Reiki has that way of coming in and going, well, actually, you really, really, really want to teach Reiki. And so that same thing where I had to move through the time period of doing both until I was sure enough that I could let go and sell that other business and move into this one. So it was a transition. So I think that's good for people to hear too. And then that other part of all the things that go with it are ongoing, like, websites and business practices and social media and learning more and getting more comfortable with your skills as a teacher and a practitioner and all of those. Those are all ongoing. After 20 some odd years, I'm still in them. And same thing, because Laurel was my mentor, and she was the same thing of like, you're doing this.
It is ongoing. My website just got hacked last week.
Oh, that's right.
So I've been, I have someone who takes care of my website for me. So we got it cleaned up pretty quickly, but it is constant. It's continual growing and learning. I struggle with social, with some of the social media. I have really clear intentions of sending out regular newsletters, and then I find myself, not doing those, but those are little things.
Right.
Yeah.
Those are little things. The big thing is that if you love Reiki and you really have considered, teaching Reiki, now's the time to get more Reiki into the world. Now's the time. It's always the time. Just think of all of the people, all of the students that you'll be helping. And, one of the most fulfilling things is when a student comes, back to me and they say, oh my gosh, that class changed my life and the way that I view everything. It changed my life. And I look back and I remember and I say, I know exactly what you're saying. It changed my life.
Yeah, even though it's been that many years ago, it definitely changed my life, sent me on a trajectory of this path, and so compelling. Like the guidance was so strong. And at the same time, when I say that, taking into account the resistances that I went through, the fear that I went through, the self-doubt. Robyn just did a whole thing about what we call imposter syndrome. Am I good enough? Do I know enough? All of those things. And I love the way you talk about just walk through it. And I think also the guidance of regret is one style, and another style of that is the guidance of excitement, of like
Following the bliss.
Yeah, like, oh, like what's exciting to me. And actually one of the words that I've really been bringing in a lot lately in my prayers is asking to wake up my curiosity. And that was one that I didn't realize. I mean, I think I'm always curious, but I didn't realize like I hadn't really engaged with my curiosity, and just for curiosity's sake, where it didn't have to have an agenda attached to it, but just like, I'm just curious about that for the curiosity, for the interest in it. And so I don't know how that relates to all of it, but that's what's coming through to say is for me right now. That's one of the things that I'm like really asking, I guess, the signs of show me my curiosities, the things that I still want to know about that are exciting to be, and, create more thriving. And some of that, Robyn and I, of course, we get to work together. So we talk a lot about business practices and the things that we get to do with that, because that's really creative and fun too. A lot of times people think, oh no, I have to do business things, but they can be so creative and fun.
Yeah, I love that. I'm going to have to write that down and explore that. The curiosities. Absolutely. It's kind of like life is a mystery. Show me those mysteries and those curiosities. And
well, we've got Robyn's daughter is endlessly curious, endlessly. And I remember it's even been a year ago, but I remember it. That's one of the things that clicked in was we were walking out from her front door to go to the car, and, kind of in a direct line to it. And all of a sudden the snowflakes started coming down, and she, and off to the curiosity of the snowflakes and that childlike wonder. And it really caught my attention I was like, oh, invite that back, invite that just momentary of, look,
Yeah, what kind of space does that create, right? That curiosity that creates a space for so many things to emerge from that and to fill that space. I love that. The curiosity of a child.
Yeah. Well, because we all have it, but we lose it over time because we get into the day-to-day stuff. Or I should say, I would say I've never completely lost it, but definitely, an awareness of maybe not even needing it as much, or feeling like I didn't need it as much. Like I'm just not, it's like, yeah, I can just be, so it's been a fun one to activate. And I'm going to include that, the curiosity and the signs, like that childlike wonder and the mystery of it. I love that, and the magic of it. I love
Magic. Yeah, I'm always about, ask for the magic and just the things that we go, oh wow, show me more of that, like that thing with the hawk, right? Being right in front of you. It's, oh, I need to pay more attention to nature. It talks to us. It gives us information. And all you got to do is learn to read the signs, right? And just be open to that. I can't tell you how many times in Reiki classes that, I'll be Googling something that a student has seen in their meditations. And it's like, wow, it's so on target. This symbolism that we're given, symbolism of the spirit.
That's so true.
It's amazing.
I'm in the place of discerning right now, having just returned from Egypt and some of the signs that I received there. And of course, while I was there, it all seemed to have one perspective. And now today it has another perspective. And I think that's the other piece that I would bring into this conversation is, as you've talked about the signs and asking for them, the listening and the receiving of them. And what does that mean? Because a lot of times we're like, I want that right now.
Mm-hmm.
So can you talk about the distance of time? Like you say, is it timely between the ask and the receive and the process that you've gone through in that receiving and allowing that receiving?
Yeah, sometimes it's really fast.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's really fast. And, a lot of times, these spiritual encounters are really, really fast. And it's so important that when we ask, that we just release it, right? And just keep our eyes open and then acknowledge, right? Acknowledge. And maybe even do a little testing on whatever it is that you're receiving, right? And see if you get any kind of, validation, and I even know people that ask for very specific signs. I want to see 3 ants climbing a hill, with a butterfly on a bush behind the ants, right? And they get that. Sometimes they get that, but they ask for very, very, I'm not going to believe this until I get this very, very specific sign, right? But, I am more to just say, universe, just show me, just show me. And the answers to those requests never come like we think they're going to. God has a way, the angels, of being very creative in the way they deliver the answers to what we're asking for. Very creative. But, sometimes these answers take a while. Sometimes we realize, I've been receiving, answers to that question all along, and I just didn't recognize them. And then something comes and just hits you up the side of the head. I do a lot of inspired writing, channeled writing, inspired writing, many times to get answers, to things, or to even find out more information about something. It becomes channeling, when you're doing the inspired writing. I like to teach little workshops on that. I think it's like you said a few moments ago, Colleen, you were talking about curiosity. I think that plays a big part in all of this. And that's why it resonated so well when you started talking about curiosity. You know, to have that curious nature, to be open to, you know, receiving the information in very profound ways, and just being open. I think being open is as in not taking everything for what it appears to be, right? The things of this world. And when you pay attention, you know, you can overhear a conversation in the grocery store, and they may be giving you that conversation that you're accidentally overhearing, maybe an answer to something, right? I mean, the delivery, you can't even fathom how some of these
it's orchestrated.
Yeah, right.
It's like, how did they make that work?
Well, and sometimes it isn't the hawk sitting in front of you. Sometimes it's more subtle. Sometimes you even said at the beginning of the conversation, Patty, sometimes it's a eureka moment, a download, you know, like we talk about this a lot, that, we have these times where we have them in our Reiki things, and it's just this amazing, you know, or like that sign, that animal was exactly what I needed to look up to give me the answers that I needed. Sometimes it's the hawk or the sign on the bus. Other times it can be when you're cooking, or when you're driving, or when you're showering, is the big ones that we talk about, is when they happen for us. Mm-hmm. And it's the light bulb. It's the eureka. It's that. And that is a mystical experience too, because it's put all of these things together and connected them for you in this moment for divine guidance.
The pieces of the puzzle falling into place, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And so that's your answer.
Yes. You know, this can come to us in any way. We're all unique. We, you know, I had to be hit upside of the head a couple of times, and
it's that too.
Me too.
But curiosities, being open to possibilities, just living your life in wonder, and being happy as you can be. Happy. I believe that happiness and peace, just we become a magnet for things, and that being appreciative, being grateful, you know, all of those, loving ourselves, knowing that we're worthy. You know, as simple as saying, you know, please guide me today, and you know, help me to fulfill my purpose. I think we all have lots of purposes, but help me to find a place of peace and happiness. Guide me. Sometimes it's as simple as maybe living a less complicated life, right? Letting go of some of the stuff, and just living a simpler, less complicated life, so that you have the time and the energy to devote to the things that you love. Sometimes we have to take a step or two, and then more is revealed, and all of a sudden things are revealed to us right in front of us. I wish I had the answers, you know, where I could say, oh, you can invoke these mystical experiences by this, and this. But I truly believe that it is like a combination lock, and it's just a lot of different things that can bring us up to having more of these experiences. And who knows, maybe, you know, maybe many of the listeners are already having these experiences, right? And without even maybe realizing or thinking, them knowing them for what they really are, which is mystical experiences.
And this conversation, they're going to be like, oh, that's what that was. That's what that's been. Notice.
Well, and for me, I really do activate Reiki because I think the energy enhances it, and the ability to notice it is a big piece of it. The capacity, like I need the capacity to be able to notice, to put my attention somewhere, to ask for something like curiosity, and then, like you say, be open to it and receive it, and do some of the maybe healing work around some of these things that might block us, or fears or resistances. And I know for myself, I worked with somebody this morning, and it was like, you know what, just receive it, because you have to move out of the figuring it out. Like, just let the energy come in and do it for you. And
Yes.
It does, because the trying to figure it out sometimes is, clouds the process.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. Just take that one step and see what unfolds in front of us.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Well, that's why we have our class called Next Step Reiki. It's like, what's your next step? And, aside from the fact of talking about the class, how interesting that ask has been to go into what's my next step, which sometimes feels like a giant step. Sometimes it's half a step. And then sometimes the step is stand still. Right now, stand still. And then sometimes it's a bunch of steps at once. So that's a fascinating ask in and of itself of, what's my next step? And so I'm thinking of that for people listening, aside from the next step classes, but the idea of the ask of, what's my next step? Show me a sign.
Yes. And, sometimes all we have to do is trust.
Yeah. Well, and that can be the hard part, right?
That is the hard part, for sure. You get better at it.
You do get better at it. Yeah.
It's a muscle, that trust muscle, right?
Yeah, right.
Trust
So many times you look back, and then there's the, thank God for unanswered prayers.
Yeah.
So that discernment of it all, of like, okay, which is it? I think Robyn talked about it in the distance share a couple of weeks ago about, how is that when you feel like Reiki isn't giving you what you want? Because it's showing you something else, and that experience. So anyway, what a fun conversation, Patty.
I just want to say real quick too, with the trust, like you said, Patty, it's a muscle, because I think in the spiritual community, we talk about it a lot and say it a lot. But even now, even still, sometimes you just have to tell yourself, I'm just going to choose to trust in this situation. It's not like I have it 100% of the time. I don't have any fears or any doubts or anything like, what if that doesn't work out the way that I want it? There are plenty of times where that still comes up within us. Maybe some people have it 100% of the time. I don't know. I don't.
Logical side of our brain, it's like we feel like we need to know everything before we maybe teach something even, right? Oh, I can't teach that because I don't know everything, but you know enough to begin.
Yeah. And I'll literally say to myself, I'm just going to choose.
And you can continue to learn.
Yeah.
I know enough to teach Reiki classes, and I could continue to learn as I was teaching.
Yes.
Right?
Always.
Yes.
Which is the fun part.
Yes.
Because it's unending. I'm so glad now. At first, I wanted to know it all, and like, okay, I'm getting there. And, chasing the getting there. And now it's like, oh, I'm so glad there's no getting there. That it's like it's ongoing and
Yeah.
get to
And I
keep
think these
going.
mystical experiences that we have, because I know everyone has had these mystical experiences. They teach us to trust,
Yes.
don't they, Robyn?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And get the
Absolutely.
validation.
The validation.
hmm People talk about that sometimes in classes where they'll say, well, I know I'm not supposed to want the validation. Like, I still like validation. It's like, I'm not over it. Still human. Validation's fun. So,
It is. What a wonderful conversation. I've
Yeah.
so
really
much fun.
enjoyed it so much.
Well, let's go ahead and just say your information again. It is, you can find Patricia LaDale Lane. LaDale is LADALE. Oh my gosh, it's been a long day of talking. Brain's a little scrambled. Lane. But her website is Sacred Spaces by Patricia. Or if you go to ReikiAttuned.com, it will take you to her website. Both places go to the same website. You can find her on Facebook at Patricia LaDale Lane. And email, same thing at yahoo.com. It's probably easiest to go through the website to get the email. And then you can find her book on Amazon, and it's titled The Angels Orchestra, a little book that takes you on a big spiritual journey. Beautiful. She's holding it up on camera.
I
Yeah,
have it too.
nice.
Excellent. So much
Well,
fun.
thank
And I
you
don't know if you
so
know
much.
that for years, one of my other side things that I was a book cover design judge for book covers. And so I would get books, and that was part of my job, was to evaluate the covers. And I really like your cover.
So this is a picture my husband painted, Jimmy, when we first got back together again after 33 years apart. And those are our souls. You can see the hearts, and the angels are pushing the souls up to heaven. It's a Celtic village because he's Scottish, I'm Irish. We love anything Celtic. So, what would have been better to use as the cover of my little book than that picture that has angels on it? Talk about things falling into place. And thank you for liking the cover of my book.
Yeah, it's great. Well, and also Celtic. My name was Colleen Patricia Carney. So kind of there, then married a Benelli. So, although it turns out he's very Irish also. So, with the DNA. Well, Patty, just what a fun conversation. Thank you so much. And any of you listening, Patty is teaching Reiki classes and other classes, and she's been very humble about not talking about all the things that she's doing. So go look at her website, look at her social media, and check out her information, because she's really a very gifted person and teacher also.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, everyone. And you can find us at ReikiLifestyle.com. I'm Robyn Benelli Reiki on social media, most active on Instagram, and Colleen is at Reiki Lifestyle Official. We've got lots of classes, all that kind of stuff coming up. So you can go to our website to find any information on us. All right. Well, thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.
Till next time.
Thank you, everyone.